We eagerly awaited the arrival of the passengers in the airport baggage claim area. My brother-in-law Bob was there with his two daughters, Danica, 9 years old, and Louisa, 7 years old. With me were my son David, 12 years old, and my daughter Sheila, 9 years old. The children were holding up a large sign that read, "Welcome home, moms." 2 weeks ago, my wife Mandy and her sister Helen went on vacation to the beaches of Belize. It's a great way to escape the cold winters of Minnesota, especially in January. Finally, the passengers started appearing at the door. The children erupted in cheers when they saw their mothers. Both women looked stunning with their beautiful tans and bright smiles. Mandy kissed David and Sheila and gave them a tight hug. Then she turned to me, and I was rewarded with a passionate kiss. I hugged her and found it hard to let go. "I missed you so much, darling." "Wait until tonight, honey," she whispered in my ear. "I'll show you how much I missed you." And that night, she certainly proved it. After 15 years of marriage, she knows a few things about me. One of those things is how much I find tan lines exciting. After the kids went to bed, we went straight to the bedroom. "Sweetheart, lie down in bed and be ready to greet me when I come out of the bathroom." In the blink of an eye, I found myself waiting in bed. A few minutes later, Mandy came out of the bathroom in a thong bikini. Mandy's most attractive feature has always been her very beautiful face, a face made for smiles. Wherever she went, she had the most beautiful face. However, she was her own worst critic when it came to her body. She felt she was too short, too skinny, not big enough in the chest, too thick in the hips. A side effect of 2 pregnancies was that her breasts had become fuller and more voluptuous. The thong bikini certainly showcased her lovely curves. But the best was yet to come. Mandy stood at the foot of the bed, displaying her gorgeous golden tan acquired on the beach. First, she slowly pulled down the thong, revealing a white patch of skin in the front. There were faint tan lines where the thong straps had been. The sight made me come alive. She slowly unfastened the bikini top, letting the fabric hang from her chest. Finally, the bikini fell to the floor, exposing her white breasts. I immediately crawled to the foot of the bed, grabbed her by the waist, and pulled her close, kissing her white breasts while my hands caressed her body. My kisses gently trailed down from her chest. We spent a good part of the night rediscovering each other. A few days later, Mandy was cleaning the bathtub. I stood in the hallway, enjoying the beautiful view of her moving buttocks. Mandy sensed my presence and glanced over her shoulder. "What are you standing there for?" "I'm looking at you and thinking about what I would do if you weren't wearing pants and the kids were already in bed," I replied honestly. "Pervert," she giggled. "Tease." She stood up and walked over to me. She took off her plastic gloves, tossed them over her shoulder right into the sink, and teasingly approached me, swaying her hips. She pressed her entire body against mine, her belly against my aroused body. "This is how you can tease," she said. Normally, I would have pressed my hips to increase the contact, but I couldn't. A few seconds earlier, a feeling of fear had washed over me. I didn't know why, but there was definitely something off about the scene in front of me. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out what it was. Mandy got tired of me not responding to her teasing. "Just like all men. All talk and no action," she said, giving one last hip thrust. She turned and grabbed the gloves from the sink. I might as well finish cleaning the bathroom. It was then that I realized what small detail had struck my subconscious. I turned pale, turned around, and left. "I'm going to the garage," I muttered, not caring if Mandy heard me or not. In the garage, I sat on the workbench, lost in my thoughts. I had a bad feeling about what I had just discovered. Had Mandy cheated on me while she was in Belize? One thing I was sure of. If Mandy tried even a little, she wouldn't have any trouble finding a man willing to sleep with her. And what I saw made sense only if she had indeed tried that during her vacation with her sister. What would I do if I found out she had cheated on me? The answer was obvious. I would leave her without hesitation. It would hurt. Well, it already hurt. But it would be even worse because of our 2 kids. Why did she do this to me, to us? Was I such a bad husband? These questions kept swirling in my mind for the rest of the evening. But although I had a very strong feeling that she had cheated on me, I had absolutely no evidence that she actually did. So how can I find out for sure? The affair, if it happened, occurred 3,000 miles away in another country. I can't confront her because she will simply deny it. Could I confront her sister? I toyed with this idea for a while, but the 2 sisters have always been equally stubborn. I've known them all my life. If one cheats, the other would too. I needed to talk to Bob about my suspicions. Sometime later, I heard Mandy calling me, and I returned home. "What have you been doing in the garage all this time?" Mandy asked. "Over 2 hours. You'll catch a cold." "Oh, just tidying up a bit," I said simply. Then an idea struck me. I didn't want to sleep with her. Anyway, I already caught a cold. It hit me this morning. I think I'll sleep on the couch for a few days. I could see that Mandy didn't like this idea very much. "Alright, I'll make you some herbal tea before you go to bed. Chamomile should help," she said. After Mandy went to bed, I was left alone with my thoughts. My mind jumped erratically from one idea to another. Why did she do it? What can I do? Should I talk to Bob to find out if Helen cheated? At some point, I realized there was a sure way to find out if Mandy had been unfaithful. She was addicted to staying in touch with all her friends and acquaintances. On social media, Mandy had at least 600 or 700 friends. In her address book, there were even more. If she had connected with someone in Belize, I was sure she exchanged contact information so they could keep in touch. However, I didn't know if she would use her current email account since we knew each other's passwords. Eventually, I fell asleep as a plan started to form. The next day, I was very tired and had trouble concentrating at work. I arranged to meet with a divorce lawyer the following day, Friday. Then I called Bob and asked him to meet me for lunch. He was surprised but agreed. I told him about my discovery. At first, he laughed at me, but soon I convinced him that it was serious. He promised to try to find out if Helen had been unfaithful. Claiming a severe case of the flu, I left the office early and returned home at 3 p.m. I immediately installed a keylogging program on our home computer. A week passed before I discovered the truth. Mandy had logged into a different email account. Her password consisted of our children's names and ages. Just a few days after returning from Belize, she was communicating daily with Brad. The emails were explicit from both Mandy and Helen. Helen had also slept with a guy named Steve. I forwarded all the emails sent and received by Mandy to myself and then erased all traces of my monitoring. From my email account, I sent several of these emails to Bob. I found out that they had been having sex almost from the first day in Belize, and they even swapped partners a few times. They were already talking about meeting again next month in Chicago. The girls would pretend to go shopping, while the two guys, longtime friends, would pretend to go watch the Chicago Blackhawks. A quick search on Mandy's and Helen's social media pages revealed two recent friends, Brad Simmons and Steve Reiner, both from Illinois. Both were married. "I've got you now, guys." I had a difficult task ahead. Bob denied that Helen and Mandy were cheating. He kept my suspicions a secret but never truly believed that his loving wife would be unfaithful. I understood his position. Looking at Mandy's behavior with me and the kids, it was hard to believe she was planning to break up our marriage. She seemed so loving and caring that sometimes I even believed I was wrong. This certainly helped, as I had to resume regular sex with her. I called Bob at work. "Hey, Bob, it's Jack," I said. "Can you access your personal email account from work?" "Sure. Did you send me something?" "Yes. Read all the emails and call me back." I waited for half an hour before he called back. "Damn it, that witch," Bob yelled over the phone. "Tonight, I'm throwing her out on the street. Damn it, I love that woman. I would have done anything for her." "Calm down, Bob," I urged him. "I have a plan and I need your help. We can't let them know we know." "I can't. I just can't. I need to hurt her badly," Bob said. "We will, Bob, we will. I promise you that. But for now, pull yourself together. Call home and leave a message that you're working late tonight. We'll meet at the Old Town Pub and I'll tell you about my plans." Later that evening, Bob and I had our first strategy meeting. "Bob, what could really hurt our wives? Besides a kick in the ass?" "Besides any form of violence," I said. Bob didn't respond to my question. "Shame. I want to shame them in front of their loved ones. You know how our father-in-law, Tom, adores his two girls," I said to Bob. Bob agreed. It was a well-known fact. "But you also know what he hates most in life, even more than the tax authorities." A knowing smile appeared on Bob's face. "Cheating wives," Bob said. Tom's ex-wife, Mandy and Helen's mother, had cheated on him throughout their marriage, as he later found out. After the divorce, she got custody of the two girls, the house, generous alimony and child support, and a large part of his company. He had to borrow a lot of money to buy her share of the business. It took years to get his company back on solid financial footing. Now he had sold the business and was living well, but alone. He often visited his daughters and grandchildren. I explained my plan. We just had to act like loving husbands for 2 more weeks. Do as I do, Bob, I explained. Catch a few colds and work late a lot. You'll be too sick or too tired to perform in bed. Have sex with her once a week for appearance's sake, and soon we'll be free of them. Of course, that evening I returned very late. Mandy was already in bed, and I just pretended to have a terrible headache. I thought a bit about the revenge plan but soon fell asleep. I was already aware of the upcoming shopping trip when Mandy announced that she and Helen had planned a shopping trip to Chicago. I told her it was a great idea. She planned to stay at a downtown hotel. To show my love and support, I even booked the room myself using our joint credit card. The room was reserved for Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, with double occupancy, as Helen and Mandy were supposed to share the room. The girls were ecstatic. Bob also offered to pay for a room. This room was reserved for Mr. and Mrs. DeRocher, with double occupancy since Helen and Mandy were supposed to share this room as well. Bob and I arranged it so that each of them thought we were booking just one room. Though we knew the girls were not going to share a room, we had no idea that their lovers would be there. The girls planned to take Friday off, fly to Chicago in the morning, and return on a late flight from Chicago on Sunday. The following week, I spoke with Tom Raines, Mandy's father. I told him I wanted to surprise the girls by bringing the kids and him to Chicago for a family gathering, as the trip was just 2 weeks after our 15th wedding anniversary. Tom thought it was a great idea. I asked Tom if he could book 3 rooms. He thought it would be a big surprise. Bob and I were disgusted by our wives' behavior that morning when we dropped them off at the airport. They acted like 2 schoolgirls going on their first date, laughing at everything and nothing, brimming with nervous energy. At the security gates, we kissed them on the cheek. They didn't even notice that neither Bob nor I said, "I love you." Bob drove us back into town. I took out my cell phone and made a quick call. "Hi, this is Johnston," I said to the private detective I had hired. "They'll be landing in Chicago soon. Is everything in place?" "Yes," Alan White replied. "They will be in rooms 201 and 203, and everything is set up for both audio and video. I'll have everything ready for you when you land tomorrow." The next morning, we all met at the airport. During the flight, Tom switched seats with my son David and sat next to me. "Listen, son, don't think that I'm just an old foolish geezer," he said to me. "You and Bob look like you're heading to a funeral. The 2 of you are up to something. What's the problem?" "I'm very sorry for keeping you in the dark, Tom," I replied. "I know you love your daughters more than anything in the world. I'm afraid I have some very bad news for you. They're cheating on you, guys, aren't they?" he asked bluntly. "Yes," I replied. "They slept with 2 guys they met and had sex with for 2 weeks while they were in Belize. I have a private detective gathering all the evidence we'll need for the divorce, and we'll file it as soon as we catch them in bed with their lovers." Tom fatherly placed his hand on my shoulder. "I'm very sorry, son. I know how painful this is. I had hoped that the few years they spent with me would instill some sense in their heads, but I'm afraid being raised by their mother for most of their teenage years had a constant negative influence on them." Tom cried. "I didn't know I could suffer so much again," he said quietly. Regaining composure, he stood up and returned to his seat. Alan White met us at Chicago Airport. He came to me with 2 envelopes, one for Bob and one for me. They contained a set of compromising photos and a DVD recording of last night's events. He informed us that the processing server would contact us soon and that his operative was monitoring 2 bedrooms. His assistant would inform us of the most compromising and awkward moment to burst in on the lovers. Simmons and Rayner's wives will receive similar packages by midday. Bob and I asked Tom and Alan to watch the kids for a while. We needed to see how bad things really were. My heart sank when I saw Mandy in every imaginable sexual pose. There was even a photo with 2 idiots at once. As far as we could tell, they had unprotected sex. Bob and I will need to get tested for venereal diseases in Minneapolis. Then Alan White called his assistant to find out if the way to the hotel was clear for us. The lovers had gone to lunch, so everything was fine. Tom booked 3 rooms. Bob and I asked for an extra key card for rooms 201 and 203, registered under our names. Both key cards were issued after the clerk checked our IDs. We told the porter that our kids had planned a surprise so he wouldn't alert our wives. We all went up to the 3rd floor where our rooms were located. After an hour of waiting, Alan White called. They're back from lunch and in their rooms. They've switched partners. Mandy is with Rainer now and Helen is with Simmons, he said. I'm in the lobby and the processing server just arrived. I'll send him to your room. I turned off my phone and got out of bed. Time to go, kids, I said cheerfully to the children. And don't forget what I told you, Sheila, and you too, David. Grandpa and I will enter the room first, and when I give you the signal, you shout, "Surprise, Mom." Got it? No problem, Dad, said David. And under no circumstances enter the room until I tell you to. We climbed the stairs and stopped in front of room 201. I inserted the key and quietly opened the door. Tom and I entered, with the two children following us. However, they didn't wait. As soon as the door opened, they shouted, "Surprise, Mom, we're here." Mandy was lying on the bed on all four of them and Rainer was behind her. Our appearance was indeed a surprise. Rainer rushed to the pants lying on the floor, quickly put them on, grabbed the rest of his clothes, and dashed out of the room. Well, at least he reacted quickly. Mandy jumped off the bed and tried to gather her clothes. No, 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 this can't be happening. No, what are you doing here? She exclaimed. Hey, Mommy's naked, Sheila squeaked, squeezing between Tom and me. I snapped my fingers. The process server entered the room. Mandy Johnston? He asked the only naked woman. That's my mom, Sheila said, trying to be helpful. The process server handed her an envelope. You've been served, he said and took a photo of Mandy holding the envelope, trying to cover her chest. He left. Come on, kids. Let's leave Mom while she gets dressed. We exited the room. Mandy was crying on the floor. She knew all too well what was in the envelope. Bob and his children were in the hallway. Bob, I said, now it's your show. Things didn't go as smoothly with Helen. Simmons was an aggressive type. When he was pulled away from having sex with Helen from behind, he became very angry at the uninvited guests. He punched Tom in the face. Bob didn't need any more incentive to express his disappointment, and the first thing Simmons felt was Bob punching him. Helen scratched his face, defending her father. It was a worthy gesture on her part, to protect her old man. I entered the room, grabbed Simmons, and threw him into the bathroom, away from the children's sight, tossing his clothes after him. Get dressed and get out of here, jerk, I said. Tom, Bob, and the kids left the room. Without any shame, Helen followed them, covered only by a blanket. Her father turned to her with a stern face. Go back to the room and get dressed. Like the little girl she was at heart, she turned and went back to the bedroom. The process server had disappeared during the argument but now stood in the doorway. Ellen DeRoche? Yes. He handed her an envelope. You've been served. We all went back upstairs. The initial plan was to spend the night there and have one last talk with our wives. But I wasn't in the mood to be in the same room with Mandy. I grabbed our luggage and told the kids we were going home. Tom said he wanted to stay. He had a lot to say to his daughters. Bob and his kids returned with us to Minneapolis. 4 months later, despite Mandy's numerous pleas for forgiveness, the judge reviewed our case and granted an uncontested divorce. It took a lot of effort for Tom to convince Mandy to sign the divorce papers. The house was mine since I had inherited it from my parents before I met Mandy. I also got primary custody of the children, but I didn't ask for any money from Mandy. Tom made sure they were well taken care of. Our other assets were divided equally, and I received a generous gift from Tom the following Christmas to help me get back on my feet financially. As he explained to me, it was from Mandy's future inheritance anyway. Bob's divorce went similarly, except their house was jointly owned. However, shortly after the divorce, Bob and Helen started dating again, and I'm almost certain they will eventually get back together. What a pity. As for Mandy and me, there's not the slightest chance I'll ever take her back. I kind of believed her when she said she deeply regretted what she did. I also believe she still loves me. My problem is that her betrayal completely crushed my love for her and left it in the dust of her infidelity on the beaches of Belize. I could no longer love her. For the sake of the children, we are very polite to each other, but that's all I will ever offer. One day, while she was waiting for the kids to get ready to go with her, she asked me, Jack, I'm curious. How did you even find out about the foolish thing I did in Belize? It's my love for tan lines, I replied. I don't understand. I was in a bikini the whole time. We never went to a nude beach or anything like that. Think about it, Mandy. What did you do every time you cleaned the bathroom with all the necessary chemicals? I gathered everything I needed, put on plastic gloves, and rolled up my sleeves, she said. You forgot one thing you always did first, I said. You took off your rings, your engagement ring and your wedding band. You didn't have a tan line on your finger.